Louis City fandom, that's for sure.
Lots of news.
We need a change of pace. That's what we need. Something different.
A win?
A win would be good. Oh, how I would take a win.
Oh, yeah, and against Kansas, that would be awesome.
I still think the prediction you've been saying over the past few weeks about this is like a make or break playoff thing. I think I'm gonna be agreeing with that tonight. Even as bad as things have gotten, because it's MLS, and MLS is weird that way.
Yeah, like even the team on the losing end, mathematically, will have chances, but it's just that when you're in a position where you need to get most of the points, at that point, I think it's over.
Well, and I mean, I put it in some of our notes later. There's a handful of teams now that you're essentially competing against. Like there are the haves and the have-nots in the conference, and we're one of the have-nots that are still in the playoff hunt. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And for example, yesterday, like all the results that City needed happened, but City didn't get any points.
Except ours. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. A lot of these teams will be playing each other, and City plays Minnesota twice, but gotta get 3 points on Saturday.
I mean, you can. I like talking about like the scenarios. I'm a big fan of scenarios and magic numbers and stuff like that. But like, none of it matters unless you can just win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a packed show here, Santi. We've got a Seattle recap to talk about. I don't know how much that'll take, but we got to talk about it. I think the player news might take longer than the Seattle recap if I were a betting man, because we've got stuff happened in like a day. I can barely even believe that the game was yesterday. It seems like it was 3-4 days ago at this point. But we've also got Kansas to preview, and that'll probably take like 2.5 hours by itself.
This will be the longest episode ever.
And then stuff happened tonight, like in the last 4 or 5 hours. Simon Betcher, MLS rules.
Mm-hmm.
There's even another page here in the notes. There's the Open Cup stuff. It's a lot. I kind of need this break upcoming. You ready to do this?
Yeah.
We'll see how much of a break it actually is. We should probably talk about Leagues Cup stuff in the wind down too, when we get to that Open Cup section.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. All right.
Do we also want to tease what we're doing on Monday or no?
I think we probably should.
Okay.
We could tease it in the wind down, and then we'll tease it proper after Fallout.
Okay. That works.
Sounds good. All right. Welcome in, chat. Thanks for tuning in on X, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I think that's all the places we push this thing to. Did Indy get it? Let's answer some questions real quick before we go live, because we'll cover them. But I mean, might as well while we have some fun. Did Indy get a concussion too, or just a broken nose? As far as I know, just a broken nose. He was a official concussion sub at half, but Hackworth said post game it was a broken nose. He did not say anything about a concussion. So all signs are that we're in the clear. But there's a press conference on Friday late morning, so we'll know more then for sure. How many broken bones has Indy played with during his City career? I don't know. The over-under has got to be at 3, I think, right now. Got his arm. We've got 2 noses at this point. And then God only knows if there's something else that he's been hiding from us that doesn't impact him. Like he maybe broke an ear. I don't think ears have bones. They just have cartilage. He's probably broken something else, I'm sure, during his time with City. Character building for fans. I feel it. I'm also feeling the pain. Ultra Club, Kansas. There's a lot of different places to watch this game upcoming. That's for sure. I'm excited to hear how City Park West sounds. That's for sure.
Yeah. Where are you gonna be watching at?
This is our last lake trip for the summer. So we had this booked quite a while ago. So I'll be watching Lakeside, all the people who made the trip to Kansas. And I expect to hear a lot of STL chants and drums. And I expect to hear about Sporting piping in music pregame to try and drown out St. Louis like they always do.
Of course.
It always gets super loud as you march in, and then right after, just because Kansas doesn't make noise like that, and they don't want to make it sound like it's St. Louis fans. So if you've never been to Kansas and this is your first trip, be prepared for that right before the game starts, the 30 minutes or so leading up to it, when it's just St. Louis fans in the stadium. They will pipe in a lot of music. So be prepared if you have small kids. It will be loud. All right, Santi, you ready for it?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. We are on the Big 550 KTRS and sponsored by Noble Ice Vineyards. I'm joined this evening by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran. It's basically, Santi, like an extended Fallout. We were talking because it's just you and me, and we get a little more time to talk, but we've got a lot to talk about tonight. How you doing?
Doing all right. Still thinking about last night, but I think it's time to talk a little bit about it and start thinking about Sporting KC because it's gonna be a big game on Saturday.
Big game. We're recording this on Thursday night like we always do. Thank you for joining us on our live stream if you're with us or if you're listening wherever you get your podcast. We really appreciate it. And so we're going to start off tonight by recapping a little bit of the Seattle game, most recent one. We've got to get that in. We've got lots of player news to talk about. We've got Sporting KC preview, a huge preview for them. And then we've got just all of the other news that really broke on Thursday. Thursday seemed like the floodgates kind of released. So there's a lot that we're going to get to. Let's start it off, Santi, with not necessarily the Seattle game, but what happened right before the Seattle game. I believe it was just 2 or 3 hours before the Seattle game, City announced a signing. Makai Joyner, City 2's leading goal scorer in 2024, has been signed to an MLS Next Pro contract for the remainder of the 2024 season, and then he will sign as an MLS homegrown through 2028 and is the first player to now have a club option for 2029. He's a 17-year-old goal-scoring phenom right now for City 2, leading City 2 in goals scored with 9. 4 of them are on PKs, but he is just tremendously entertaining to watch. City signed Joyner to a short-term loan agreement for the Seattle Sounders game, so he was available, and if you watch the game, you know that he saw significant time. Santi, what do you think about this signing?
I think it's great. It's deserved. He has been doing a great job with City 2. And if you look at his progression, last year he was with City 2, came from the academy, had less than 250 minutes. He was always coming from the bench. And this year, all of a sudden, things started clicking for him. And he has been so important for City 2. I had a chance to talk to Coach Bobby Murphy a few weeks ago, and I asked him about the development of Makai Joyner, and he was like, "Yeah, year one, you're coming from the academy, getting used to being on this team environment. It's a professional team, and then second year, you start getting more playing time, and he took the challenge and did really well, and now." And he also mentioned like now what we're doing. This was 2-3 weeks ago. He was like, now what we're doing, we put him on purpose on the bench during a game, and he didn't like it. He wanted to play, but what I was telling him is like, hey, when you go to the first team at some point, you need to be ready to come from the bench and make a difference because yeah, you're gonna be like the second team on the first team and be on the bench, and that you gotta get used to that and learn to do that. So yeah, it has been great for him this year, and it's very well deserved. I wasn't expecting him to come for a full half last night, but that was also very good.
Makai Joyner takes up not a city roster slot this year, so it doesn't add a person to the supplemental roster for St. Louis City. Like we talked about last week, our supplemental roster is currently full. Makai Joyner, like I said, is on City 2, signed to a next pro deal, professional contract for the rest of the season, and he'll join City in proper next year. So he won't be available for the rest of the season unless he signs a short-term loan agreement. And he said that he actually found out early in the week. I asked him post-game when he found out what that process was like. And he said he was back home in Bloomington, Illinois, and he got the call. And so he came to do medicals. He found out early in the week about the first team contract. And he credited Edu Leuven for just being a good teammate, both before the game, during the game, at halftime when he subbed in. Edu Leuven gave him a talk and just said, be confident, be you, don't let that noise distract you. So that's leadership on the team. Makai really looking to those older players to kind of give him guidance during the game and before. So great news for him. Fantastic for City's future. Makai Joyner becomes the fourth homegrown player signed after Caden Glover, Miguel Perez, Tyson Pierce, and now Makai Joyner. So let's move on to Seattle itself. Santi, the starting 11 did not contain Makai Joyner. He subbed in at half, obviously, but it was Roman Berkey, Thomas Totland, Tim Parker, Joakim Nilsson making his return to the starting 11, Kyle Hebert making his return to St. Louis City, playing left back, Chris Dirk and Edu Leuven in central midfield, Johnny Klein, Jose Kojima, Indiana Vasilev, and Nick Thorson were the attackers. Not a lot of surprises on this one. I think the debates on this one were more like, how much rest are we going to give our players on turf, midweek, away, one of the furthest away games that we have? And the answer that we had was not much. We didn't really have as much rotation as we thought. So Saturday, as we're going to talk about, is going to be very fascinating to speculate on. But the big surprise to me, and I mean, I hate to really bury the lead on this, but the surprise to me is John Hackworth started Joakim Nilsson in this one.
Yeah, that was when I saw a lineup. I was like, "Wow, Nilsson is gonna start first game after injury, and it's gonna be on turf." I didn't know what that at the time, but obviously after he got injured, and you can think about it after the fact, and it's easy, but I'm sure it was a difficult decision, but I just don't know. Like he got injured last year. Jabulo Blom also got injured at Seattle on that turf. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Something the team will learn from probably for the future.
Yeah, and I hate to go back to just the boogeyman that is the turf, because players play on turf all the time. Leuven plays on turf all the time. You've got a host of players with hamstring histories that have played just fine with knee histories. Turf isn't an end all be all. It's not like the boss of a video game or something where you just go up against this and either you're the strongest you've ever been or you're going to fail. It's turf. It has a little bit more scientifically, medically speaking, it has a little bit more of a propensity to cause injuries, but it's still something that is overall safe to play on. And so the history of this particular start appears to have been, as I asked Coach Hackworth after the game, kind of what was the idea behind starting him. And it was a rough time to ask, obviously, because of what happened,
Yeah.
but I was curious the thought process. And apparently Joakim Nilsson went to Hackworth over the weekend before the Vancouver game and said that he was 100%. And Hackworth, previously had said, once Nilsson tells me he's 100% and I see it, then we're going to give him the go ahead. And Nilsson told him that before Vancouver at home on grass, and he didn't start him. He held him out a little bit. We're going to be cautious about this. And so I don't know if it was just a continuing discussion of sorts between Nilsson and Hackworth. Nilsson just wanting to get out there so badly to help his team, and the benefits outweighing the risks. And Nilsson went 85 minutes before anything happened, and it was on a lame kind of a play. It was after a play occurred where he was hurt. And so Hackworth after the game, I mean, he just felt awful. And he said as much. He feels awful about this. And there's really no way to describe it other than hindsight is 2020. And I'm sure if he had to do it over again, he would. But now we just have to deal with the fact that Joakim Nilsson re-aggravated his injury in this Seattle game. We'll talk about what that means for SKC and the future here in a little bit. But the other injury that happened in the first half, Indiana Vasilev broke his nose. This was Indiana Vassilev for the second time in his St. Louis City career breaks his nose. He was subbed out at halftime as a concussion protocol sub, and he was down for a while. You were worried that it was going to be something more serious, but post game, John Hackworth only said he had a broken nose. And so the expectation at this point in time, as we record this, is that Indy just broke his nose. He'll be back for the SKC game, assuming he clears any concussion protocol that he might be in. But we will have more updates on that. If you're listening to this on Friday or Saturday, check our Flyover Footy social media. We will update on that to make sure that we have the latest on Indiana Vassilev's status. But on the field, those are really the takeaways from the game. But on the field, especially in the first half, I thought that our defense in particular really answered the bell. One of my big takeaways from this game overall is defensively, I felt that it was much improved. And they had a lot of defensive work to do, Sansi. The first half, we were averaging around 20-25% possession for a good percentage of that first half. What did you make of how this, not necessarily how Seattle came out, because we knew that they're a possession-heavy team, but just City's willingness to let them do what they want with the ball as they dropped back a little bit and tried to hit the counter more than they were trying to cause high press turnovers?
I think it was a good plan considering what Seattle has and the way they play. And for the first 20 minutes, yeah, it looked like City was doing what it needed to do, controlling on defense, some counter attacks. And I wanted to go back to Nilsson and Heber on the starting lineup, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about it last night, and about the remarks that Chris Dorkin made post game on Saturday about fragmented group. I'm thinking like maybe Nilsson and Heber, who was also back, being two of the leaders on the team, say, "Hey, we want to play. We have to play.
Yeah.
It's an important game," and it stepped up. And the defense looked okay. It's just that some unfortunate plays dictated the rest of the game after that first goal that Tim Parker scored on his own net.
You have to look at it as just an unfortunate play, and something that Hackworth and the players said afterwards really changed the momentum. Hebert said himself after the game that that goal changed a lot of tactics, momentum, the way that things were swinging, because before that goal, just 27 minutes in, Tim Parker trying to clear, I guess, a cross that was into Jordan Morris. I saw it more as Tim Parker was also making sure where Jordan Morris was. And so I don't know, looking at the play, watching the replays, it didn't seem to me necessarily that his focus was entirely on the ball. It was more on the ball and Jordan Morris and making
Yeah.
sure that he knew spacing and wasn't going to be beaten from behind type of a thing.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate play because before that, City had created some chances, and yeah, even though the game went at halftime 1-0, still I had a good impression on what the team was doing, and thought that maybe they were gonna turn it around on the second half, but then you also get the Basilev injury at the end of the half, and you have to also make another change there, a change on your tactics too, with the personnel you had available to come in.
And it was Makai Joyner. He got the call, and Hackworth really seemed like he was not wavering, but the debate was Joyner or Glover. Those were the only
Mhm.
two attacking choices on the bench. And so if Indiana Vassilev's going out, you need somebody in the attack. I suppose the two options really were move Edu Leuven up into the attack and then put maybe Jabulu Blom or something in central midfield. But that, I think, speaks to a little bit of what Hackworth has kind of grown to know, what the fan base has grown to know, that we love Edu Leuven at the 8, and we think that is his best position. That's where he can control the ball best. That's where he can direct the ball. His physicality is best at the 8. He didn't make that move up. Instead, it was Makai Joyner who saw time for the duration of the second half as Indiana Vassilev had to sub out. But you're right. At the end of the first half, it was 1-0. We're very much in this with Seattle. Hadn't allowed a goal in the run of play from Seattle. We were playing overall well defensively. Offensively was the same old, unfortunately. We had a couple of opportunities, nothing dangerous. Overall, we ended the game pretty poor with just about 0.45 XG on 10 shots. That's pretty typical, 0.04 XG per shot, a very, very poor rate that ranks last in the entire MLS at that rate per shot. But that continued through the second half. Offensively, our woes never really, they never got better. We never really presented much of a threat because it also had to do with the low percent possession. That played into it, where if you're going to possess the ball 30% or less of the time, you're going to rely so heavily on the few counter opportunities you get. Barely getting into double digit shots in general, only having 3 shots on target the entire game, and knowing the quality that we have and had against Seattle in those individual shots and those opportunities, we didn't stand a chance in scoring buckets of goals, but we definitely didn't stand a chance in evening it at 2 or winning 3-2. But in the second half, what did you make of any adjustments that we had? I mean, did you really see St. Louis threaten in the second half, or was it just bunker down, hope to catch them on the break, tie it up, and then what happened at, what was it, 49 minutes, just 4 minutes into the second half, John Bell, of all people, kind of changes things?
Yeah, hard to tell because that John Bell goal was so quickly into the second half. But yeah, I was. You mentioned Coach Hackworth was between Makai Joyner and Caden Glover. I was actually
Mhm.
thinking that maybe Caden Glover will come in and Nuke Vitorison will drop as a left winger.
Mhm.
But obviously, Hakwar went with Joyner, which I was thinking, well, that's not his natural position.
Mhm.
And high stakes in this game, 1-0 at halftime. But the goal happened really quickly, so I didn't really have a chance to. We didn't really get a chance to see what the
Yeah.
adjustments were and what the team was going to do for that second half.
And I don't have many takeaways beyond that. I thought overall the attacking performance was pretty abysmal, like it has been. Indiana Vassilev didn't get a proper run out because of his injury, but you're starting to see some. I hesitate to call him regression to the mean because I don't think he was ever lighting the world on fire. But Johnny Klein, Jose Kojima, we're seeing the youthfulness, we're seeing the inexperience. Kojima ran his ass off, but he had a few errant passes as well. The decision making was suspect at times with just what Seattle was throwing at them. Seattle has a very strong, very deep team. So even into the second half, they were putting guys in like Joao Paulo, guys who are
Mm-hmm.
actual best sixes, best six conversations in the league. So with that kind of depth throwing in the second half, that kind of experience, Jose Kojima, Johnny Klein, they started to really show the what their long-term use is for City, which is going to be more rotational, squad rotation type players. And that's where I get to at the end of this game is just our reinforcements cannot get here soon enough. Our healthy attackers, Klaus, Alm, cannot get here soon enough. And we cannot afford to lose a guy like Indiana Vassilev.
Yeah, it's too bad that Indiana Vasilev may not make it to the game in Kansas, and also then you get an early yellow card for Chris Dorkin, and now he's gonna be out
Mm-hmm.
for Saturday too. So two big pieces, two very important players, two of the players that have been more consistent this year are gonna be missed on Saturday for this big game.
Tris Durkin will be suspended for yellow. We hope Indiana Vassilev is back, but it's easy to say Joachim Nilsson will be out. So I think as we now pivot to look at the Sporting KC game, the team trained in Seattle on Thursday. They flew straight to KC. They're going to train in Kansas City on Friday, the Kansas City area on Friday, and then of course the match on Saturday. Joachim Nilsson, safe to say he's going to be out. Hackworth confirmed that it was the same hamstring that he pulled. They re-aggravated. Indiana Vassilev with his broken nose. We're going to find out on Friday's press conference how he looks. But as long as concussion protocol isn't a factor and it's just a broken nose, he should be good to go. And this, Santi, is where it starts to get interesting. Let's look at first what happened on Thursday morning. Thursday morning, I would even say what happened on Wednesday night, because
Wednesday night,
Wednesday
right?
night, I started to get some DMs from some folks in Philadelphia who fans and reporters alike had noticed Sam Adeniran was at the Philadelphia Union game on Wednesday night, reportedly in the owner's box. And
Hmm.
so the rumors start to swirl. I think Tom Bogert even picked up on it Wednesday night, but I asked Coach Hackworth, the final question I had was I wanted to see if he would have anything to say. And true to form, he wouldn't comment on it at the time, but you could tell something was up. And it
Yeah.
didn't take long for the news to break. Early Thursday, it was announced And City had their press release that St. Louis City had traded Sam Adeniran to the Philadelphia Union for $150,000 in GAM and up to $450,000, including incentives. St. Louis originally acquired Sam Adeniran in December 2022 for $100,000 in GAM. So it could be looked at as a modest profit, but also so much other into it. I don't want to go too much into Sam right now. We're going to touch on him more in the wind down. So if you're listening to us on Big 550 KTRS before the game on Saturday, check out our podcast for our wind down where we're going to touch on Sam Adeniran a little bit more. But first reaction, let's go quick knee-jerk reaction about the Sam Adeniran move before we touch on some players who are actually going to impact the game for St. Louis potentially on Saturday.
I think it was time, and it was needed because obviously he had his issues with Bradley Carnell early in the season and was suspended. Then he came back, but I didn't see that effort that he was putting earlier in the year and last year. So you could tell he was discontent with his situation, and maybe he didn't want to be there. And with what's going on with the team, you don't want to have to worry about another player that maybe doesn't want to be there, and when he gets opportunities, he's not he doesn't play for the team. So he had a great run last year. He started the year really well. This year didn't get enough opportunities in my opinion at the beginning of the year, and that ended up causing this situation. And the disappointing thing is that City didn't get a lot of money for him. Just thinking about that offer that was rejected earlier in the year.
That one stings. We'll touch more on that in the wind down. But the players who I want to talk about, Santi, before we look to our big SKC preview, who will be available, we don't know if they'll play, but the transfer window in MLS, the secondary transfer window for the summer opens on July 18th, today as we record on Thursday. Cedric Teuchert, Jake Girdwood-Reich, and Marcel Hartl are now available for St. Louis City. The day has finally arrived. The gap has been bridged. We have arrived to the SKC game where all three players are available. But as typical, there are nuances to each one. Cedric Teuchert, the 27-year-old forward / midfielder, depending on what press release you look at and whose information you have, I would call him a forward, that we had from Hannover 96, is the first player that you would expect to see time. He has been training and traveling with the team since his arrival over 2 weeks ago. I expect him to play. If you're an optimistic person, he might be a candidate to start. Jake Girdwood-Reich, the Australian center back, center defensive mid, 20 years old. He arrived in training on July 9th after we acquired him for $800,000 transfer fee from Sydney FC. He had training since July 9th, last Tuesday. He's been traveling with the team. I look for him to potentially be rostered and a candidate to be a second half sub or more. We'll get into or more later. Marcel Hartl is obviously the most fascinating of the bunch. Marcel Hartl is our newest designated player signing. We acquired his rights from the Columbus Crew for $350,000, the discovery rights. We signed him to a designated player deal, despite the fact that we acquired him on a free transfer. He has been signed through 2028. And this is the guy. Cedric Teuchert has been the signing for the longest. Marcel Hartl, designated player, biggest impact. He has 30-plus goal contributions to his name from last season, helping FC St. Pauli in their promotion from the 2 Bundesliga. Came to us also on a free and minus $350,000 to Columbus, obviously. But he has not been with St. Louis. He has not been training with St. Louis. It is tough to gauge from John Hackworth on exactly what his opinions are, but Hack said he's had lunch with him. He's talked to him. They've conversed, and Hartl has been extremely clear to him that he's always in shape. He's always ready to go. This is a guy who's Hack selling him as if he can walk off of the plane, catch a cab, catch an Uber, catch a bus straight to Children's Mercy Park, put his jersey on, and walk right out onto the field. Hackworth seemed optimistic, and he would like to use him if he can. That's the vibe that I got after the Seattle game on Wednesday. And I remember back to Sam Adeniran's circumstances last year with San Jose, recalled from his loan from San Antonio, hadn't practiced a single day with St. Louis since his loan, stepped right off the plane and scored a brace, and he was off and running. I don't want to put those kind of pressure on Marcel
Yeah.
Hartle, but he's used to this, right? From his experience in Europe. This is a guy who 28 years old. He's not a young kid. He's experienced. He knows how to keep his body in shape. He knows the rigors of this. He's been brought on as a designated player to make an impact immediately. What do you think immediately means for Hartle now?
I wouldn't use him as a starter. Maybe I will put him on the game day lineup, and depending on what's going on with the game, late second half, okay, go at it. Let's see what you can do. That
Mhm.
will be what I will do, but I don't know. Maybe with the highest stakes for this game, maybe he will step up and say, "Hey guys, I want to play, especially because you are down some players. Chris
Mhm.
Dorkin is not gonna be there. We don't
Mhm.
know about Indiana Basilev. I don't think the nose thing is that bad, but he has to clear concussion protocol, and I don't know if within 3 days he will clear that protocol or not. And
Mhm.
then also Joachim Nilsson. So yeah, I think he will be on the roster, but I think it's too risky to have him start. He just got here, hasn't trained with the team. He was also, yeah, he could be in shape, but he hasn't played for a while. So I wouldn't have him on my starting lineup.
I'm going to make sure we have time to go over starting 11s at the end because that's going to be fun for us to talk about. Let's get into our preview in proper of Sporting KC. We are Flyover Footy, and you're listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS, sponsored by Noble Ice Vineyards. Thank you so much for listening to us on the radio or on your podcast, wherever you get us. Let's get into SKC. These are two teams in very similar situations, and it has nothing to do right now with the playoffs as it was last year. St. Louis City sits 13th out of 14 teams in the West with a 4-10-10 record, 22 points in 24 games, 31 goals scored, 45 goals allowed. That is a minus 14 goal differential, and we have yet to win a game on the road. 0-6-5. Do I have to go over our form recently? 2-0 loss to Seattle, 4-1 loss to Vancouver, 4-1 loss to the Rapids. I think there was a 2-0 win before that against the Earthquakes. It's hard to remember now. The more you talk about our form, the more you depressed you get. So let's just move past that. But it's not just the losing. It's the losing with allowing so many goals compared to how many you're scoring. Our last 8 games, 8 goals scored, 20 goals against. Our last 3 games in this losing streak, 2 goals scored, 10 goals against. So when I look to that positive I mentioned earlier from the Seattle game being our defense, that's why I mentioned that. Because 4-1, 4-1, 2-0 sounds bad as a 3-game stretch, but the way that we let up the goals is getting better. And I think we need to take that momentum into this game because SKC doesn't light the world on fire with their goal scoring. They have more goals scored than we do, but they allow so many. So the opportunity could be there. I think our defense is going to be incredibly key to pick up what we put down in Seattle, especially in the run of play. SKC on the other side, just one spot above us, 12th in the West, just 1 point above us, 23 points in 25 games with a 6-14-5 record, minus 11 goal differential. So they're not much better off. 40 goals scored, 51 goals against. So they score more, but they also let up more, even after our recent run of form. They are 4-5-3 at home this year. Their form, 2-1 loss against Vancouver this past Wednesday, a 2-1 win at San Jose last weekend, and a 3-2 win against Dallas before that. Now, SKC has had an interesting season. And similarly, I guess, to last season where they had 10 games that they started without winning a game. The 2 most recent teams that SKC has lost to are the same teams that have embarrassed St. Louis, Colorado, Vancouver. There's a little symmetry there. Surprisingly, in their recent run of form, SKC has won 4 of their last 6, including a US Open Cup win so they could go in the semifinals. So they've had an all competitions type scenario going recently. This will be their 7th game in 22 days. They've been playing midweek matches because of this Open Cup for the past month. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that really gets me about this stretch. Despite the multiple matches in the same week for 3-4 weeks now, SKC has picked up more points in their last 5 MLS matches, 9, than they did in their previous 14 games before that, which did involve a 7-game losing streak. Not winless, but losing streak. So are we catching SKC at a poor time here, or is this just going to be a brutal knockdown drag-out brawl?
Well, as you mentioned, they have gotten a little better, and I was just looking at their form and City's form. When City won their last game and snapped that winless streak, Sporting KC lost that week or
Mhm.
that match day, and City was 5 points above Sporting KC on the table. Then City lost the next three. Sporting KC won two and lost one, and then they leave City on the table by 1 point. So
Mhm.
things change so quickly, and yeah, they have had their struggles, have a tired team just because of all the midweek games, but they also know that as City that this is the game. This is the game, and I have mentioned it here before. Uh, this is to me, this is an elimination game.
Yeah.
Whoever comes on the losing end, I think won't make the postseason.
And that's where I am too. I think that this game is more than 6 points. This game is the winner will go into the League's Cup break with an edge in making the playoffs. And that's momentum. Like that's something to build off of. That's something serious to build off of when you look at being just 1 point apart in the standings and the teams above you have started to separate themselves. So making up a little bit of ground to Dallas, Austin, Minnesota, even Houston in the 8 spot is going to be so key. If we can get losses from Dallas, Austin, and Minnesota staying pat at 29 and 30 points, then suddenly 5 points off of ninth place becomes much more attainable than the opposite, where if Minnesota and Austin win suddenly and you lose, suddenly you're looking at 11-point difference. That is a true 6-point game in every respect, not just between us and Kansas City, but us and the entire bottom of the Western Conference. So what kind of an SKC team are we going to be playing? Well, we're pretty familiar with SKC. It's still Peter Vermees. They still have the same core of players. They like to create the long shot opportunities. They will take the ball and run with it in transition. They will take these long shots from outside the box that, I mean, we've been scored on with those last postseason, so we know what that's like. They like to control the game in our defensive half, so they will take the ball to us. They will possess when they can. They will make these short passes, but they also play with width. They control down the entire left side of their field, that left wing, over 50% possession all the way down to the end line. Daniel Shallowy will take that ball and work with it on the left wing, and Jake Davis too can do that. But Daniel Shallowy in particular is incredibly vital to this team and how he play makes. They will play the offside trap, so they love to get in behind those center backs. And they had depth, but as we're going to talk about in a minute, depth has been an issue for them just as much as it has been for us. Now, the system that they run has been a 4-2-3-1 lately. We usually typically think of SKC as a 4-3-3, where they might have Johnny Russell out wide right. They might have Alan Polito up front, Daniel Shallowy to the left. But with injuries lately, they've dropped more into a 4-2-3-1 that's seen Willie Agata move up top a little bit and kind of enhance and go with Alan Polito. So what are we going to see against St. Louis City? I think it's going to be a continuation of that 4-2-3-1. Depending on if Johnny Russell's healthy, which we'll talk about in a second, they might move to a 4-3-3 and get Russell higher up. But they've had success here recently with Willie Agata leading this line and scoring goals. So I wouldn't be surprised if they run with that mostly successful last few games and stick with a 4-2-3-1. But I wouldn't expect necessarily SKC to possess the ball that much. I think this is going to be one of those battles that we've seen of who can successfully get below 50% possession in the game, because SKC has been more willing to allow passes per defensive action than St. Louis. They will sit back a little bit more. They typically allow 3.5 more passes per defensive action than City. They like to sit back a little deeper and defend and hit you on the counter, more so compared to St. Louis that likes to just turn the ball over high and then hit you on the counter from that when you create the turnover. When they're in possession, though, they have a little bit of a different shape. They don't like to push their fullbacks all the way up because they like to keep them back, draw the defense in, and create space for their wide wingers like Shallowy and Russell to be the ones who move up high. So if they're drawing you higher, purposefully kind of drawing in a high press, that's where they could beat you. And that's where they have beat us before. So we have to be careful and guarded in just how much we're willing to high press and not leave our behind our fullbacks exposed, and make sure that we're not getting caught in 1v1 in space near goal. That's a key for me that we'll touch on later, is we have to make sure we keep overloads. We have to keep these 2v1s in spaces, especially in the wide areas. SKC loves to draw the opponents out of their defensive half towards the ball, creating the space. They won't hesitate to play the ball into their attackers in multiple ways. Mentioned this a little bit ago. They could draw 8 or 9 City players into SKC's defensive half. They may hit you with runs over the top. They may hit you with a through ball down between. It's spacing on the back line that will kill us. Making sure that we have proper spacing between our fullbacks and our center backs, communication on who's actually back and who's holding the line, because they're skilled ball handlers. They can receive the ball and run with it to the best of them. What do you think about what you expect from SKC? And is it going to be a lot of what we've seen before? Like, I'm sure every City fan remembers the multiple times we've played them. Or have you seen reason to believe it could change?
No, I think it's gonna be similar to what they did against City. Like in playoffs, they had success giving City the ball and not having a lot of possession, but they are still dangerous and can find spaces even if they don't have that style with more possession. And they will, even though City has gotten a little better with the ball when the opponent basically dares them to beat them
Yeah.
by going by having more possession and more touches. I think Sporting KC still has an edge there. So yeah, I think a key will be whether Johnny Russell plays or not,
Yes.
or when he comes in. I think that will dictate a lot of what goes on this game.
And that's where they're lacking just as much as we are. They went into their last game against Vancouver with just 17 players on their roster, something St. Louis City fans know a whole lot about, being shorthanded. Questionable going into the Vancouver game were players like Memo Rodriguez with a quad injury, Danny Rosero with a hamstring, and Johnny Russell with a groin. Jake Davis will be out, so that's a
Mhm.
benefit. Mentioning earlier what he could offer, he's with the U.S. Olympic national team, just as John Polscampo is their backup keeper with the Olympic national team. They're also still without Logan Ndembe, who suffered an ACL injury last November against us when they knocked us out of the playoffs. And Felipe Hernandez is on
Mm.
administrative leave until TBA because of a gambling policy violation. So they've got an interesting laundry list of players, just as we had, but a different flair to it. So we know that Ostrak, Pompeu, Klaus, and Alm are going to be out. Nilsson is probably going to be out. We hope India is good to go. We have our new signings coming in. I might give us the edge if a guy like Johnny Russell and Memo Rodriguez especially can't go. These are key players for SKC. Memo Rodriguez leads the team in assists. He's one of the higher players in shot creating actions. He actually leads their team in shot creating actions per 90. Memo Rodriguez does. So he's key to progressing the ball. And I think they do look a little bit different without him. So my hope is that he won't be able to go. Not that I hope for anybody to be injured, but I do think they look different, even if with or without Johnny Russell, they look different without Memo Rodriguez.
Yeah, but yeah, you have to play what the opponent gives you, and even if they are out, like this hasn't worked well in previous games against previous opponents when they have key players out, somebody else steps up. So I think City still needs to be focused on what they can do, and hopefully we'll see a good showing from some of the new signings if they go from the start.
I mean, that's honestly most of my takeaways right now is focus on yourself, because you can look at Willie Agata as having ascended for SKC in the absence of Johnny Russell. He's got 8 goals on the season, tying his season high from 2022 when he first arrived at SKC. You can look to the injuries, you can look to the fixture congestion for SKC, but they're managing it. They're still sticking around somehow, despite all of this. And so now from the St. Louis side, what do we have to do to try to make a difference here? We've seen this last game with SKC where we drew 3-3, that it was a back and forth match. It was not one team figuring something out and sticking with it, but it was a punch counterpunch situation. So how much can these new guys come in and help create a difference? Because they've been training, Toyhert's been training with City. He's developing repertoire with the players. You're seeing him in the pictures joke around. We're seeing him in training be just one of the guys. Jake Girdwood-Reich, same deal. He's obviously not going to be as much of an offensive threat, but with Chris Durkin out, there are options there. And so with St. Louis struggling to find offensive form and having some new guys come in that are just complete unknowns in our system, I think this is an opportunity to really take SKC by surprise on an individual level. So you get Toyherd out there, you get Hartle out there, and you see what they can do because you don't really have much to lose. You said earlier, this could be it when it comes to making the playoffs. I said that we are only 8 points out of ninth place. SKC is 7 points out. SKC has also played one game more than us, so they need this as much or worse than we do because of how many matches they have left after Leagues Cup. On that same lines, you're looking at teams like Houston, Minnesota, Austin, Dallas as right above them. Houston plays Vancouver, a tough team. Minnesota plays San Jose, not a tough team. Austin plays Charlotte, who have been a good team this year, and Dallas plays New England, not a good team. So you've got other matches that you're looking at that need to help you out, but none of it matters unless you can start scoring goals, unless you can take this defensive performance from Seattle and continue it, and you figure out a lineup that can actually carry you through it. So my keys to the game before we get into our starting 11, Santi, we have to get the new guys involved somehow. I think no matter what it looks like that we'll talk about in a moment, they have to be involved and they have to do something. It's a lot to put on their shoulders. Yeah, but that's what we've been doing for the past 2 months. We've been talking nonstop about we want things to change. These will be the difference makers. Toyherd, Hartle. Now's the time. This is the first game that we can start to see that. We have to score a goal, preferably 2, maybe 3, but I'll take 2. But we have to score and we need to score early. We can't let SKC on their home turf dictate the pace by getting an early goal. When they get an early goal, they're going to fall back into a low block. They're going to leverage the counterattack almost exclusively and make you beat them because they're good at not being beaten when they have the advantage in the lead. I think we have to build on the defensive performance and trust that our center backs can actually hold their line and play good transition defense and try new things. Keep the numbers advantage in all phases. Don't leave anybody on an island out there. Communicate and take the fragmented locker room that maybe Nilsson and Hebert helped to propel to that performance that we saw against Seattle, defensively positive, and build off that. Use this momentum, create momentum of your own. Even if you don't believe we have any true momentum from Seattle, create some. Now's the time. New blood is injected into this roster, into this locker room, and they're available now. Use them. So with that said, Santi, do you want to start with your starting 11 for this one, or do you want me to?
No, I'll go. I'll give it
Okay.
a try. It sucks that now it's gonna be another new center back pairing just because Joachim Nilsson had that injury. So I have Berkey. Then on the left side, I have Jay Reed. Center backs, I have Hebert and Tim Parker. Right back, Akil Watts. Then midfield, Edu Leuven and Jabulo Blom. Then Nugby Torison as left winger, Kijima as the 10, John Klein on the right, and Cedric Toyhart as the number 9.
Cedric Toyhart is your new signing immediately plugged into the starting 11.
Yeah, it makes sense. He has been training, and I think he's a must, especially because you could have some absences tomorrow. I mean, on Saturday.
Yeah. I've been mulling mine over as we've been talking, and so I'm going to call an audible in what you see in our show notes, Santi. I'm going to go with Roman Berkey and net, obviously. Thomas Totland, Tim Parker, Josh Yarrow, and Jaden Reed on the back line. I like Reed getting back in there after seeing some rest on Wednesday. I figure Yarrow or Hebert could go at center back, but one of those two. I'm just picking Yarrow because Hebert went on Wednesday. My midfield, I'm going to say, why not go for it? Why not go with JGR and Edu Leuven in the midfield?
Oh,
Is it crazy?
Like
It's absolutely bananas. It's so insane. I don't think I might wake up on Saturday and I might say, what was I thinking? There's no way we're going with this. But I don't know. I like I don't think he's a kid that needs rest. He doesn't need to come on as a second half because of his fitness. John Hackworth said if he's at the time, he said he's 19 years old. If he's not in shape, something's wrong.
Right.
So why not give him a run? Whether it's at defensive mid, whether it's alongside Tim Parker at center back, I want to see JGR and I want to see a lot of them. And it starts now. So JGR and Edu Leuven I've got there. My attackers are going to be from right to left, Indiana Vasilev, Jose Kajima, and Nukvi Thorson, and then Cedric Toyherd up top. I see a second half sub for Marcel Hartl, assuming he's arriving. That's not guaranteed that he's going to be there, but assuming he's there, I think he will play in the second half. I even had him in my starting 11 when I first did my notes. I went all out for it. And I said Hartl at the 10, Kajima and Indy around him, and then Cedric Toyherd. That's how hyped I am for these guys. That's how much I'm desperate for new injection of life into this attack. I don't want to say, all right, we're going to bring them on slowly. That time has passed. If Lutz is going to make anything of Bradley Carnell being dismissed and sticking to his word of the playoffs are slipping away, you have to change the attack from what you've been doing. You cannot continue to go with Nukvi Thorson up top and John Klein, Indiana Vasilev, Jose Kajima in your attack. It doesn't work. I don't think it works because Nukvi Thorson at the out and out number 9 can't lead a press. I don't like how he presses. I don't like how he initiates our defensive actions. I don't know what to describe it as: hesitant, skittish, or unwilling to just take a chance. But nobody else will follow him in that press. It doesn't initiate well, and it doesn't cascade to the rest of the lineup. Cedric Toyherd's the answer there. Get him in at the 9, bar none. Absolutely. And it starts from there and it goes back. If Hartl is here and he shows up and he tells Hack, I'm in good shape, and Hack trusts him, run him out at the 10 from the get-go. We've got a Leagues Cup break that you could use if something happens, but I mean, he's a 28-year-old, like, designated player professional. The kid glove should not even be a consideration for me for Marcel Hartl. Am I being too gung-ho about this?
No. I think I'm just a little bit more conservative, but yeah, if he is in shape and he may also this is it, and I think he may also want to be involved because he will want to be in playoffs and help the team get there. But if the team doesn't get points on Saturday, chances to get there may be very little. The team will need to go on a winning streak and get results on most of the games that it will have left, and that's possible, but it's also very difficult. You think about last year when Lionel Messi came to Miami, they won Leagues Cup, and when the league resumed, they kept the pace for a few weeks, but then they Messi got injured and had other injuries and ended up not making the playoffs. But they had that same pressure, like they had to win like 75-80% of their points, and they didn't get there.
That's right. And these are 28, 27, and 20-year-olds that we're talking about here. I want to see them as much as physically possible because what we've been doing doesn't work. I can't underscore that enough. And I want to see new blood injected immediately as our best chance to take down SKC. A draw is not enough. Needs to be a win.
Yeah, it's a must-win game. This is it.
Score prediction, Santi, really quick before we go.
2-1 City.
Here. I'll echo that. 2-1 City. Let's go. I want to see a Cedric Toyherd goal. That would light City Park West on fire if Cedric Toyherd scored a goal in his debut. Let's go.
Assisted by Marcel Hartl.
The cherry on top from your mouth to your goal call. Let's make it happen.
Oh my God, that would be awesome.
All right, let's get out of here, Santi. Thank you for joining us on Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Check out our podcast for a wind down where we're going into depth on a host of other things that have been going on around, including Sam Adeniran, Simon Betcher, MLS rule changes, and a whole lot of other stuff. Join us on our podcast. We appreciate you joining us. Go City. We need this win at City Park West, and let's win this Clásico, Santi.
Vamos City.
All right. appropriately got crazy there at the end. I was excited for that. I knew it would with that 11. I don't know where
Yeah.
JGR is going to slot in. Center defensive mid, center back. I just want him in there. Like it's not about depth chart to me right now. I should have said this on the air, but it's not about depth chart to me. It's about getting somebody different who can
Yeah,
spark the team.
I get it. Yeah, just change the momentum.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, maybe we'll see the three of them, or at least two. We'll see.
That's right. All right. Well, we'll be right back for the wind down. Oh, no. Hope it's not a bad sign that my flag fell down. How embarrassing. Maybe I should just take it down. Who knows? Santi, you back?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. You want to start with Sam Adeniran?
Yeah.
All right. Let's get right into it. Let's just do this. And yeah, my flag might fall during this. Half of it fell a little bit ago. We'll see how well that 3M command hook sticks. Might need to do some redecorating after tonight. All right, I'll bring us in. Once I find that page I was looking at. There we go. Okay. Welcome back to the wind down. And in honor of our new German players, I have an Urban Chestnut Old Maibach German style lager. Cheers, fam.
Cheers.
Do you have a Parker Pilsner, I see?
Yeah. I got some. I was at the store the other day and I was like, oh, let me see if they have Parker's beer, and I got it.
Quality. So we mentioned Sam Adeniran briefly, a little too brief for what needs to be said. It's been quite the saga. I saw that term a lot on social media. I used it. A lot of my friends used it. A lot of you all used it. The Sam Adeniran saga. The Sam saga has come to an end, and it's hard to really look at this right now and say what should have happened throughout this whole thing. Like, how would this have ended better? And I went two ways in this. So you have Sam last year at the beginning of the season when you sign him December 2022. He comes in and he's third string striker, right? He's after Klaus, he's after Nico Gioacchini. And at times at the beginning of the season, we were only running one striker. We were running Klaus. And Nico was coming off the bench. Sam just didn't have a place. And then we found a two-striker system working. And then we sent Sam on loan. And then Klaus got hurt. And then it became a question of, do we recall Sam right away or do we let Klaus heal? And I think a lot of City fans remember the agony that we were going through last season, not knowing when Klaus would return. The timeline that the team gave us early on did not pan out because the injury was just not healing like it should have. He's eventually recalled. He eventually does great. We talked about it against San Jose. And then he carries himself on until Klaus returns. But then Klaus returned. And then there was less room at the table, more mouths to feed because you had an informed Sam Adeniran. You still had Nico Gioacchini, who was scoring goals, and you had Klaus return, who it could be argued that Klaus didn't fully regain his form that he had at the beginning of the season, scoring at a pretty good clip. But regardless, Sam still made his mark. And at the end of the season, you go into the offseason thinking, somebody may get moved. It might be Sam Adeniran because of what we saw, his age, and the fact that we only acquired him for $100,000. His contract goes until the end of 2024, so you want to get some value for him. A lot of City fans might forget that it was only in March of 2024 that the rumors of a $1 million transfer fee began to circulate for Sam Adeniran. And March puts him at after Nico Gioacchini had been sold. So the timing of this offer from Mold FK in March of 2024 needs to be taken into context of this, because right now the knee-jerk reaction is we only got $150,000 from Sam. We had $1 million offer on the table. What is the front office thinking in this entire saga? But picture what would have happened, if you will, follow me back to March 2024. Nico Gioacchini has been sold. We're finding out about that time that Cedric Teuchert is too expensive for us to bring in. Hanover's asking $1 million for him. And so what you would basically be potentially doing is selling Sam for $1 million, bringing in Cedric Teuchert for that same amount, and you're still down a player that you need to replace in Nico Gioacchini. So that's a potentiality, but I think the more likely thing is if Sam had been moved, we don't pay the price for Cedric Teuchert and we wait it out still. And so then you're at the point, if that's the case, that you're not just down one striker, Nico Gioacchini, and we saw what happened when we were down Nico Gioacchini this entire season. That's been a theme. We're also down Sam Adeniran. And so we don't get to see this play out. We're stuck at that point in this alternate timeline of a notion where we know what Sam did. We expect him to pick up the Nico Gioacchini slack, and now he's gone. You're sending out a combined 20 goals scored, and you're not bringing anybody back in to replace it. That is a very real potentiality of if we had sold Sam at the time for $1 million. So like, remember this whole picture when you're thinking we should have sold Sam for $1 million versus we sold him now. The reality of what happened is as bad, just in a different way, I think. Like, there's no good ending to this. I don't think there's anything good that really plays out. I can't come up with the perfect ideal solution to all of this having played out. But what ended up happening was probably worse off for the entire club from a personnel standpoint, from a cohesiveness, because it's really hard to deal in the locker room with a player of Sam's caliber getting suspended, having friendships among the team, and then being kind of brought back after being brought back into the fold, and then transfer rumors are rising, and so he's gone again, and then he comes back as soon as the head coach is fired. Like, this whole saga in what actually happened may be actually worse the more I talk about it than being down a striker that you sold for $1 million and couldn't replace him. Because what do you think, Santi, in that? Because I don't want to go back and forth and say like what we should have done versus what we did necessarily, but that's kind of where we are in how to evaluate this whole Sam Adeniran thing.
So the only thing that I'm thinking about is, yes, you weren't going to pay the price for Cedric Teuchert at that point. But if you had to make that business and let Adeniran go, the window was still open, right? The winter window. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. The first transfer window in MLS was open from like the beginning of February until mid-April.
So there was still opportunity to do something about it. Maybe not Cedric Teuchert, the guy you wanted, but you could find other solutions and bring somebody to fill the gap until the summer, and then that somebody maybe after that will be more like a CD2 player or a bench player. But yeah, we didn't have a crystal ball to know that this whole saga was going to happen. But I just want to point out there were options, maybe not the sexiest options, but the team could have still done something and find a player. But yeah, it just didn't turn out well in with any of the options available. Because yeah, you could have declined, and then Sam would have been very productive, and his price could have increased too, and maybe this summer you will be selling him for 1.2, 1.3, or still for 1
Yeah.
million to another team. So yeah, it's hard to know.
And ultimately, one of the things that is pervasive through the city fan base now is in why Sam didn't get the chance or butted heads with Carnell. Often, I think, focus on the defensive side. We've mentioned that quite often here. Is we don't feel Sam's work on the defensive side was what City was asking their strikers to do. Similar ways that I'm frustrated on how Nuke V. Thorson leads our line. He still sprints around. He still runs and puts on defensive pressure. I just don't think it's in the way that we need from our number 9. I would love him out on the left wing, left mid, doing what he's doing, but I didn't really like anything Sam did on the defensive side. By and large, you had moments, instances where yes, he did sprint after a player. I mean, it wasn't just like he lollygagged the entire time. But what you need from your striker is every single time you don't have the ball and the center backs do or the keeper does, you need to be the one to lead with that push point. And Sam, I didn't feel it was there. And this isn't the first time that he's been moved within MLS for a low transfer fee. Talking with Jeremiah Oshan from Sounder at Heart, he was going to be loaned originally from Seattle to St. Louis. That's the arrangement that Brian Schmetzer and Lutz Pfannenstiel were trying to work out, reportedly. And when MLS wouldn't let a player be loaned like that, because I guess they're on an MLS contract, and so they didn't like that precedent to be set, he was sold for a modest $100,000 transfer fee, GAM.
Mm.
And so now we did the same thing. And so now it's Jim Curtin's responsibility to do
Mm.
something with Sam Adeniran while transfer rumors are still swirling. Manuel Veth reported on Thursday that those talks, and I think Jonathan Tannewald, even from Philadelphia, now is getting in on the reporting that Sam Adeniran is still in talks to go to Austria, potentially with Lask.
Wow.
But I all of this is under the predisposition, one of those words, that in our live stream chat, Cordis AJ, I hope that's what your name is. Have we ever seen evidence the $1 million offer was real? Those rumors always seem inflated when the deal actually gets done. Normally, I would be skeptical to all levels of that, because a random $1 million offer for Sam when everything else is going on does seem suspect. But it was Manuel Veth at Transfermarkt that said that St. Louis turned down an offer for Mold. Sources with direct knowledge of the situation told Transfermarkt. Manuel is always good with these things, especially with St. Louis City, let's be honest. And so trustworthy, and that's as trustworthy of a source that we're going to get. That's why I put stock into that particular rumor. That said, I think this is adding fuel to the fire of a clean break for St. Louis in a lot of different ways. We had AZ get transferred earlier. We'll never know the full story of what really went on with that. We had Sam with known issues just get transferred out, freeing up a roster slot in the process, senior roster slot. And so now you have new guys coming in. You have a fresh start of sorts for the locker room. This is the chance against SKC in more ways than I think we've ever had since the very beginning of the season to right the ship and create something to meaningfully build on.
Wow. You are converting me about the starting all those three guys on Sunday.
If only I
Um,
had John Hackworth's ear.
but he sounded excited about Hartel, so maybe they will have a chat and he will say, "Yes, coach, I'm ready to go. I want to help this team from the beginning, and this is the game. I understand it. I listened to Matt Baker and Santiago Beltran, and yes, this is the game. So yeah, I want to be their coach."
Imagine a spine against SKC of Cedric Toyhurt leading the line, Marcel Hartl right underneath of him, Edu Leuven, JGR, Tim Parker,
Hmm.
Jabulu Blom maybe in there, and then Roman Berkey. Or some combination on that back part of JGR, Tim Parker, Kyle Hebert, Roman Berkey, something like that. But you have Edu Leuven, you have Marcel Hartl, and you have Cedric Toyhurt.
Yeah.
How exciting would that be to see that starting 11, or at least see that on the field at some point on Saturday?
That would be awesome, especially a lot of people when Marcel Hartel was signed, a lot of people expected him to make instant impact. So imagine if he
Yes.
comes in where he's as a starter or second half, whenever he comes, and you see the quality, and he starts making that impact, and hopefully assist Cedric Toihar on the goal that we talk about during the first 45 minutes. That will be great. That will be a great story, but we'll see. Back to Adeniran, something that caught my attention, Matt, when you did your preview with Jeremiah. He talked
Mm-hmm.
about Adeniran not being good at the press when
Mm-hmm.
he was in Seattle. I got that same information last year when he was signed from another reporter that covers Sounders, Nico Moreno. I was like, hey, what do you think
Yeah.
about Adeniran? And he said the same thing, like he wasn't good with the press. So
Well, it kind of makes you wonder what they saw in him to begin with and why they brought him in. The pure goal scorer skills were enough to outweigh, and they could teach him the system. You wonder, in a lot of ways, how much Sam Adeniran is going to teach this organization about the type of player that they want to bring in.
mhm.
And I don't mean the personality of Sam Adeniran. I don't mean that at all. I don't mean how he conducts himself off the field. I just mean if you have a player who is a pure goal scorer, who is a pure talent in a certain facet, but they either don't have a history or they have red flags, yellow flags that they might not be exactly what you need in all phases. I wonder if that might give a little more pause than even already existed. Because Lutz had already said before that they were not going to be signing the absolute best player in a certain country at a certain position just because they're the best player with the most talent. They need to be a
Mhm.
person to fit the system. And so Sam Adeniran seems to be the only person so far that you really can't say well fit this system. You have reason to believe significantly, and even before they came here, that he wasn't going to fit. So I just wonder how much Sam is teaching the front office about scouting as much as anything.
Yeah, not only Sam Adeniran, but I think everything that has happened this season, it's still a great learning experience from for the front office, and the moves that they need to make ahead of the season and mid season when the windows open. I think this year will still be a good learning experience for everybody, and I think the team will approach the winter window before the 2025 season differently.
Before we get to the winter window, let's use this as our transition real quick because Byron Tim in our live stream chat asks, anyone think Lutz has another move in his pocket this window? And as it would happen on Thursday afternoon, Tom Bogert, of course it's Tom Bogert because it's an MLS move, said sources St. Louis City is interested in signing forward Simon Betcher from AC Horsens in the Danish First Division, which is the second division down from the Superliga.
Yeah, I
So
was a little bit confused when I was looking at that, but then I realized it was the second division.
yeah. Yeah, so it's almost like the EFL, the championship. If you say the English championship, people might get confused if they're not familiar with English football. Yeah, Danish First Division is their second league. AC Horsens. Simon Betcher was drafted by the Vancouver Whitecaps in 2022 after attending SLU from 2019 to 2021, if I have my stats correct. He had 21 goals in 47 appearances. He was the 16th overall super draft pick by Vancouver in 2022. And if you remember back early last season, he set the record for the quickest person to score 4 goals in just 87 minutes of his first action in MLS in early 2023. He won the player of the match day in week 6 of last year. Didn't really do a whole lot after that, but wow, did he set the world on fire for a hot minute. And then this past January 17th, he was transferred to the Danish First Division club AC Horsens, where he now resides. And so I don't I haven't looked into it enough yet because I don't know how serious this is yet of any MLS isms that would have to occur. But because Vancouver actually transferred Simon Betcher out, I don't believe they would retain any rights to him coming in.
Right.
Um, so I don't think there's as many mechanisms as say Marcel Hardel with discovery rights for Columbus. I don't think we'd have to deal with that. But the question would be Simon Betcher, why? And I think the answer is depth, squad rotation, bringing a hometown kid of sorts home. Betcher went to SLU with Johnny Klein. I mean, there's a lot of Simon Betcher has familial ties His grandfather, I believe, is in the St. Louis Soccer Hall of Fame. Yeah, he's Stu. Jerry Hayes in our live stream chat noted that Stu Holtgren, our buddy, who is not with us tonight because he's got some, I don't know, project, something for work. How dare him?
Yeah.
Said that he's a shithouser. And so I think that's a Jared Stroud type of a player that can really just wreak havoc, cause some chaos, get into guys' minds a little bit. That would be fun to have. But when he really broke out beginning of last year, The Athletic did a nice little article on him. And if you're looking on the type of player he is, positionally, he says that, well, everybody around him says he has a goal scoring instinct. He primarily played as a false nine or a creative midfielder when he was an academy player. And it wasn't until his first involvement with the U20 U.S. men's national team in 2019 that coaches noticed his potential as an out and out number 9. So what I'm hearing is versatility. I'm hearing attacker. He can go into a bunch of different areas. He can be that underneath Marcel Hartel type of a replacement when he needs rest. He can be a winger. He can be a 9. There's some interesting things to like, but roster space is at a premium right now for St. Louis.
Yeah.
The more I started to think about this, and after I got excited about another SLU guy coming back, the more I started to think that, and this is a personal plug, if you haven't seen my what I posted on X, I created a updated club profile for St. Louis that used what MLS had, and I've tried to update it as best I can to keep us where we are currently because it's pretty outdated at this point. And with the Sam Adeniran sale, we have now one pure open roster slot on our senior roster. That I believe that slot that is just an open slot on our senior roster, but we have 2 short-term options this year because Salio and Ostrak are on season-ending injury lists. But if you're talking long-term, 1 slot. And so with that 1 slot, are you going to use it on Simon Betcher? No disrespect to Simon Betcher, but does that really raise the quality of what you're trying to do here? Because we're not just trying to add depth. We're past that. We are adding quality and building to get better. We need players like a Ramirez in Columbus or a Leo Campana in Miami. Oscar, absolutely right in our live stream chat. We need to elevate the floor of the team. And when I think of elevate the floor, honestly, the floor that I see right now for St. Louis City's depth that I want to consider our floor is Jose Kojima. Like, that's the best player right now. Maybe Nukvi Thorson is a floor where these guys are asked to do what they're asking now. But imagine when we get everybody healthy, Santi. Imagine not just Toyhert and Hartel up front, but you have Klaus back, you have Alm back, you have Salio back, you have Ostrak back. Maybe Salio is your current floor. Imagine that. Imagine a world where Nukvi Thorson and Salio Pompeo are fighting to be the floor of your team because you have Rasmus Alm out wide right, you have Hartel in the middle, you have Indiana Vasilev, and you have Klaus and Toyhert. Like, that's too many players in the attack. Too many players in the attack right now for St. Louis. Like, actually 3 or 4 of those players are going to be bench players. So
Yeah.
Simon Betcher doesn't move the needle for me in this regard.
I agree. And when I saw it, yeah, I thought about, oh, it's Lou guy, and then I look at what he had been doing in the Danish second division. Not impressed. 3 goals in
Yeah.
14 games or something like that. And if you are thinking of him as depth, you also have to think about the young guys. So if Simon Betcher comes, what happens with Caden Glover? Is one of your homegrown players.
Now Makai Joyner.
And Makai Joyner. You need to continue developing those guys so they become the depth guys and can come the last 20 minutes, the last 30 minutes of a game, and sometimes make a difference, find solutions. But if you bring another guy that will compete with them, I don't think that's it. To me, it's a no.
All right. That makes 2 of us. And we don't usually do that on Flyover. I think we've gotten to the point now where we expect more from this team, and not just because of the results that we had in 2023. Like, we're not of the illusion that 2023 is going to exist every single year. Lutz, if you've noticed, Lutz has been saying more and more lately how they overshot last year. I think he's trying to reframe narratives a little bit more and try to bring expectations in a line. But I'm not of the illusion that should be the goal. But at the same time, growth from where we are now and a healthy St. Louis City right now is still a contender for top 4.
Yeah, possibly.
Healthy, fully healthy.
We won't know until next year. But yeah, just thinking about what you mentioned about Lutz, like kind of not talking much about 2023 and basically talking about it as a yeah, we overperform. If this year was last year, like if 2023 was like this year is right now, nobody will be worried. Everything will be fine. But it's just the expectations that last year created. Now everybody wants a team to be up there on the table and to make the playoffs every year, which is great. But at the same time, lots of things happened this year and key players injured, and it just to me it seems like the team cannot get a break. Like Joachim Nilsson comes back and doesn't last 90 minutes, and it looks like he's now gonna be out for a few games, which is unfortunate because it's been tough for him. Like when he arrived, obviously he was injured and he missed a lot of the first season, and then this second season he also had this is like the third time he gets injured, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna
If you
miss,
count that initial one, yeah.
yeah, and it's gonna miss time again. So so yeah, it's hard for a player that was supposed to be part of that spine. um Hopefully he will come back healthy again, but um I don't know what will the team do if he comes back later in the year or early next year and still is struggling with injuries. Now you have to think about making a move there. You know?
For Joachim Nilsson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to mention Taylor Twellman's take on Joachim Nilsson?
I don't have it in front of me, but if you have it in front of you, go ahead.
I was trying to bide time while you were talking to pull it up, but Taylor Twellman is not the biggest fan of Joachim Nilsson moving the needle for St. Louis City. He did have stats to back up his perspective, that's for sure. But a lot of this is, I would say, correlation without causation to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but Taylor Twellman did notice that there is not a great record for St. Louis City with Joachim Nilsson in the starting 11. And that dates back to the back half of last year in 2023. And I do see a little bit of his point when I was looking at the goals for and goals against, especially. Joachim Nilsson has not had the benefit of St. Louis City scoring goals, that's for sure. Uh, he obviously has had to deal with injuries throughout the team. And actually, now that I look at it, Twellman might have deleted that post.
Oh, really?
Yeah, fascinating.
Interesting.
Anyway, the record is bad in Joachim Nilsson starts. The goals for that I looked up earlier are 25 goals for, 37 goals against in the 21 games, I think. I think Twellman had the number of games wrong, is what I think. Because I couldn't find 22 games. I found 21.
Maybe that's why he deleted it. Yeah, I think I see somebody reply. I was like, wow, he already played 22 games. I don't remember that or something like that.
Yeah, and I didn't check the record that he posted because I took that almost as face value. I didn't really care as much for the record, but I care about the underlying things because
Yeah.
records you can't pin a record on a center back. What I would look to are goals against, for instance, or things like G plus. You know, what if we had access to that data? But what I ended up coming away with it is my whole takeaway in this entire thing, because we need to move on, is that Joachim Nilsson's time with us so far has not moved the needle for me as much compared to replacement players like Josh Yarrow and Kyle Hebert.
Hmm.
Not even considering Lucas Bartlett from last year, but I'm just saying if you were to take Joachim Nilsson out and put either Josh Yarrow or Kyle Hebert at center back, I mean, legitimately think about it. Go back and look at the games that both of them they've all played. And even on the games where Joachim Nilsson has started, played the full 90, supposedly been totally healthy, how many games would you actually say that Joachim Nilsson is a much better option than Kyle Hebert or Josh Yaro? Or games Yaro or Hebert have played, have you is it just perception that you know how much Joachim Nilsson is making? You know he's one of the top earners on our team. You know what he did before he came to St. Louis, which was an every match starter for the Swedish national team, playing for Arminia Bielefeld, I believe, in the Bundesliga,
Mm-hmm.
and the accolades that he brought to us. He was supposed to be one of the best center backs in the league, but then he got hurt in the UEFA Nations League
Right.
the May before May 2022. As he signed his City contract, right after he gets hurt, and that is the derailment, I kind of think. And at this point, I'm thinking that that's just the story. Unfortunately, we saw the documentary that they made, and it was beautiful about his return. He is an incredible person, but so far his time with us has just been disappointing. And I'm not to the point where I'm saying I don't feel any worse about having Hebert or Yarrow. Or at this point, that's maybe another reason why I just want to see JGR out there, because you might have to start thinking long term what the options are here.
Yeah, and I think it's disappointing because he hasn't appeared in a lot of games. He has missed a lot of games. But if you think about it, and Oscar Rojas mentioned it here, he came back last year during the second half of the season. And when he came back was when the team started to drop in form and started losing more games. And this year has been this year. We know the team hasn't won a lot of games. So you can probably pull another player that has played during that time frame, and it will have a similar record. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's correlated.
Yeah. Chat City Tactics did shut down Taylor Twellman on that, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the losses have piled up this year, but it's not quite as dramatic as Twellman had made it out to believe. And I'm not sure what matches he was necessarily looking at, but I don't have the stats in front of me exactly for how many we've lost versus won, but I know the goal differential is not great. So that's where I was, and that's why I kind of disregarded the record. I went straight for the goals, 4 goals against. One thing, though, Santi, that could help us in the future as we talk about how much players are making, replacement players, and the like, are that MLS introduced new rules on Thursday. They confirmed and then basically signed into law the rule changes to the roster rules that we had been predicting and talking about for so long. Earlier in the week, it was announced that one piece of these rules was basically shut down by the MLSPA. So if you remember weeks ago, and you might have read the MLS soccer announcement by now, but MLS was proposing rule changes to the roster rules that would basically add on designated player or U22 initiative slots. Along with that, they were wanting to add an additional contract buyout for each team per year, which would have actually moved the needle in what teams could do to bring on better players. Currently in MLS, teams can only have one contract buyout per year, meaning if you have an underperforming designated player, for instance, and you say, we are done with you, we want to cut bait, and we're going to move on, you buy them out of their contract, you pay them what they're due for the length of the contract, and they're gone. They're no longer under obligation to play for you. And MLS was proposing that teams could do 2 of those per year. That was shut down by the PA. So that is not a part of this. Teams only have one contract buyout still. What teams now have, though, we'll start with the less sexy one right now. It is the amount of money that teams can convert from transfers to allocation money. And if you've been a Flyover Footy listener, you know how valuable allocation money is. The updated rules allow that clubs can convert up to $3 million of total transfer revenues received into GAM without restriction for the amount from any individual player transfer. $3 million total for a season. Under previous rules, clubs could only convert up to about 1.215 million following an individual player transfer. So the example obviously is we sell Nico Gioacchini for $2 million. We can convert up to 1.215 of that into general allocation money, but that's the most amount we can convert into GAM for the entire season. If we sell another player abroad, Nicholas Dewar, since we sold Nicholas Dewar for like 400,000 in GAM for $400,000 transfer fee back to Denmark, We couldn't convert any of that into GAM because we'd already maxed it out on Nico Gioacchini.
Mm.
What this rule allows you to do is say, if you sell Nico Gioacchini for $2 million, you can convert all of that into GAM. And if you sell Nicholas Dewar for $400,000, you can convert all of that into GAM, and you still have an extra $600,000 you could convert into GAM from another transfer. Way more flexibility. You're injecting a ton more of GAM potentially into the system if you're able to develop and sell on players. So I mentioned this because it's not getting the fanfare, it's not getting the focus. But when we're talking about, we've talked a lot about St. Louis City in their approach to spend on their roster, and it being directly influenced by how much they're outputting, how many they're selling players for, how much they're getting in transfer fees, reinvesting into the player pool. This allows them to reinvest a ton more. It places such a premium on developing players and selling them abroad and converting that money into the Garber bucks, into general allocation money that you can then spend up and down your roster. Like, that's how you meaningfully spend more up and down your roster, because you can use GAM to buy down player salaries to fit into the salary cap that exists. It's injecting money into the system without having to change the actual salary cap rules. This is massively meaningful. It's an extra almost $2 million per year that a team could have available if they have this pipeline that they're selling players for. So that's hugely meaningful to me. And that's going to be very fascinating to watch go forward, to see what teams are able to take advantage of it. And I hope, beyond hope, that it's St. Louis City. But the big one, Santi, that I think everybody is excited about is the fact that there are now, and MLS is now referring to this differently. They're calling it 6 prime roster spots. Did you see this?
Oh, yeah, I did.
So instead of saying you have 3 designated player spots and 1 U22 spot, or saying you can have 2 designated player spots and 3 U22 spots, MLS is now saying you can have either 3 designated player spots and 3 U22 spots, or 2 designated player, 4 U22, and $2 million in GAM. There are pathways you can choose your own adventure for how to build your roster every year. Now, I'll start right off the bat by saying that teams have to choose what they're going to take advantage of. Clubs have the options on how to construct their rosters every year, but before each season, clubs must declare their roster construction path every single season before the season starts. In 2024, right now, clubs have until August 14th, the close of the current transfer window, to declare their path. So what does this mean for St. Louis City? Well, Santi, I mentioned that nice little graphic that I tossed out earlier. St. Louis City currently has 3 designated players: Klaus, Hartl, and either Edu Leuven or Roman Berkey. One of those players was bought down using targeted allocation money so that we could sign Marcel Hartl. The other player, we'll just say for conversation's sake, it's Hartl, Klaus, and Leuven, because that's what I think it is. Now, St. Louis can,
because you can use more money if you buy down Berkey, right? Instead of buying down Leuven.
It's about a wash. Honestly, that's been a conversation point on social media where it's like, why would we buy down Leuven why would we buy down Berkey when Leuven makes less than Berkey per year? And the answer to that is a player's charge against
fee, right?
the transfer fee. Edu Leuven, we actually acquired for $1.1 million in a reported transfer fee. That amount is amortized over his contract. So when you see the salary number for Edu Leuven, that sits at like 1.34 million, and Berkey has about 1.65. Leuven has like $300,000 in transfer fee per year added to that, and that's what his actual budget charge is. It's basically max TAM.
Yeah.
And so Leuven can be bought down because of that, but he's about at Roman Berkey. So it's a wash. You can say whatever. The options St. Louis has because of these roster rule changes are you keep all 3 of those DPs. You keep Hartl, Klaus, and Leuven as DPs. That means you do not spend an extra $1 million in TAM to buy one of those players down. And you have 3 U22 spots. So for the remainder of 2024, if this is our path, we have these 3 as our DPs, and we have Durkin, Girdwood Reich, and an empty U22 slot. And we get $1 million of GAM. Because, or not, sorry, in that instance, we don't get any GAM. In that instance, it's just 3 DPs, 3 U22s, and we move on. The other option is you buy down Edu Leuven for $1 million in TAM. So you spend $1 million in TAM. You have 2 additional open U22 slots. And for 2024, you get $1 million in GAM given to you, which is also kind of a wash. Like you're spending TAM to get the same amount of GAM for the 2024 season. That's a wash to me. So I don't know that in 2024 it matters as much
No.
unless Lutz is looking to do something this year in this transfer window right now with one of these spots, a DP slot or a U22, especially U22. But because we already have an open U22 either way, I don't think it moves the needle. I don't think it matters as much right now. But next year, it's going to matter. Because next year, you can make the argument that if we buy down Edu Leuven, and so we spend $1 million, so he's not a DP. We have Klaus and Hartle, and we have 4 U22 spots. Then we get $2 million in GAM. Suddenly, $2 million in GAM minus the $1 million it would take to buy down Leuven makes it worthwhile. And you have extra U22 slots.
Yeah, all the benefits you get from having U22 slots.
Yeah.
That could be a good path. I think I will like it. The one rule I wanted to ask you about, obviously it didn't change, but team can do one buyout per season.
Yeah.
So the question here is St. Louis City going to use that buyout that it has for this season?
Well, currently, depending on what website you check, we have 2 number 17s.
True.
I don't know what you would need 2 number 17s for.
I see where you're going.
I don't know what you would need. Let me count our left back locker room right now. We have Reed, Marcanic, Hebert, potentially Watts. It's a lot of left backs. We also haven't seen our original number 17 since his loan supposedly ended on June 30th with FC Sarajevo. I haven't seen an announcement yet, but Selmer Pedro is our contract buyout. I don't know what you're doing if you're not buying him out with his contract, because who else are you going to buy out? Selmer Pedro is making, let me check my nice little graphic here. Selmer Pedro is making a little bit over $300,000. I didn't even put him on my roster. That's how much I think we've already bought him out.
I know,
Because
and I wanted to ask you because a few days ago you mentioned, you basically said, yeah, he's not gonna be here. I was like, and it was like, I was like, did I miss the announcement? So I was like, I have to
listen,
ask you.
thanks for asking me here live while we're doing this. But I've never been more sure of anything without having any physical proof. Like, I don't have any reason to, like, nobody's told me Selmer Pedro is being bought out. There's no, Tom Bogart's sources have never said Selmer Pedro is being bought out. I mean, that's not a flashy thing that he's going to say. But at the same time, if you're looking at that mechanism and saying we have this at our disposal, we would pay him out the rest of his contract. Yeah. So you're looking at Selmer Pedro making $374,000 a year. And you're looking at Selmer Pedro's contract going until, I think, 2025. So you're spending a little bit, but what has he given you so far?
Right.
That's the point of a contract buyout, is you're not just buying him out of your contract for this year. It's the remainder of the contract. That's the whole essence of it. What I mentioned earlier about teams spending it on DPs, so they free up a DP slot. That's a significant chunk of money that you're just paying out for a failed prospect.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider is he went on loan. Obviously, those terms are not announced, but it's possible cities still paying some of his salary.
Yeah.
So if they are,
especially if they are.
If they are paying part of his salary, it makes sense to use the buyout clause.
It does. It does. You know, I hope to get clarity on that at some point soon, and I would expect that we would get clarity on that at the end of the transfer window when the dust settles, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more. I'm expecting another official club profile to be put out by MLS at some point in the fall, maybe coinciding with the MLSPA's fall salary guide that they release, but we'll get more clarity in about a month, I would expect. Lutz usually does a press conference, at least he did
Yeah,
last year, at the end of
yeah.
the transfer window. So that's our chance to ask, and you can bet we'll get clarity on that.
Can the buyout be exercised anytime during the season?
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
you can use it in May. You can use it in October. Yeah, it's just one per season. Use it or lose it, but it does cost you money. Like it's a significant consideration. Pedro, though, I think is because of what his salary is and what his role on the team would be, is the obvious option, and I will continue to espouse that until somebody tells me to stop
Yeah,
or
and
until it's announced.
true. So I have another question. I'm sure you know the answer. So a club has to pick this model at the beginning of the season.
Yes.
Can they change it mid-season? Like if they buy out a DP, can they change the model, or do they have to stay within that for the rest of the season?
No, it's pretty clear that MLS doesn't always make things clear, but they made this pretty clear. Quote, clubs must declare their roster construction path at the start of every season. So they are locked in. It's almost like it coincides with the roster lock that happens at a certain date right before the season. So they have to get their ducks in a row and they have to declare how their books are going to be for that year. And that's why I think that teams aren't likely to change this very often, because
Right.
if you're setting this and you're purposefully setting your path, so you have 4 U22 initiative slots and you sign 4 U22s that season, you're going to sign them to multi-year contracts. So you're going to be locked in for a period of 2, 3, 4 years at least. You might have rolling numbers, so you might roll off a U22 or something, and so you can change. But I would be shocked if you see teams declare next year and then all of a sudden a ton change their declaration. I think, especially with designated players, I think they're going to be locked in for a period of time, because it would kind of change things up quite a bit. You're going to see a lot. It could be a lot of fun to watch what teams do. I'll say that. But just to recap really quick, those main things, because the models are difficult to understand. And if you don't know the full details about what a designated player U22 initiative players are, please listen to our MLS 2.0 podcast that we have in our feed. But I'll try to really quick recap it. In MLS, every player has what's called a max budget charge. This year, I believe it's about $670,000. And so bookkeeping, this is all bookkeeping to MLS. It has nothing to do with what they actually get paid. Players cannot be on the books at making more than $671,000 unless they are one of these designations. They are a designated player, they're a U22 initiative player. You're using them as a TAM player. That's why you see TAM players spot for players like Tim Parker, Thomas Ostrak, Joachim Nilsson. They're making above that amount, but you have allocation money, targeted allocation money that can only be used to buy down those more expensive players to fit in this nice, neat salary budget charge number. Designated players make that max budget charge number plus $1 million or more. So $1.67 million or more is a designated player. And that takes into account transfer fees. It takes into account yearly salary. That's why Leuven is a designated player. Klaus is a designated player who cannot be bought down because his transfer fee was reported $3.5 million, and he makes way more than that in his salary budget charge. Roman Berkey had no transfer fee, and he is making his contract pretty clearly says you're paying me the max TAM amount because it keeps rising every time the MLSPA releases their numbers. And he made a subtle dig on Taylor Twellman's little Between the Hedges or whatever podcast that he has about not having as big of a contract as Hani Mukhtar.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that's what a designated player is. A U22 initiative player is basically a DP, somebody who can make more than that max budget charge with transfer fee and with salary, but their first contract in MLS has to be before their age 22 season, and they only hit the budget charge at $150,000 or $200,000 per year. Chris Durkin, perfect example. He signed this kind of a contract with DC United. So his first contract in MLS, after his first contract coming in, was U22. So he signed that. He hit their budget at 150,000, despite the fact that he's making right now 400,000 or so a year. For St. Louis City, Chris Durkin is a 24-year-old. And so the U22 initiative player is applicable until your age 25 season. You sign it before you're 22. It's a multi-year contract, and you can only be on it up until your age 25 season. And so that's Chris Durkin right now. He's hitting our budget at $200,000 on a U22 contract, despite the fact that he's making $400,000. Jake Girdwood-Reich is a U22 initiative player who we signed. We paid an $800,000 transfer fee to Sydney FC. He is making, we don't know yet, but let's just say $500,000. Okay. I don't know. We'll find out this fall what he's making, but whatever he's making is still, plus the transfer fee, well over that $671,000 max budget charge. We don't have to spend anything to buy that down because he's a U22 player, and he only hits our budget at $150,000 because he's only 20 years old. That's the kind of value this mechanism has. You can spend whatever you want on Jake Girdwood-Reich, $800,000 transfer fee, X thousands of dollars in his salary, but he only hits the budget at $150,000. That is massively vital. And that is why, Santi, you in particular, Phil, Stu, myself, we want to see St. Louis take advantage of this position. This position, if you hit with your U22 players, because, I mean, they're young, like you're not going to hit on everybody, but if you hit on one of these players, that is a massively valuable piece of your overall roster construction. You could use 4 U22 initiative slots, and you could only be allocating 4 roster slots for $600,000 in your overall salary cap spend for your team. If you have 4 difference makers that are DP level players who hit your budget at a combined $600,000, that is epic in MLS terms and how valuable that is.
It is massive. It is massive. And imagine one of these players makes a great impact. Then you are looking at down the road in 2-3 years selling them for like 3-4 million, maybe more. So yeah, it's a great mechanism, and I am a big fan of it, and I'm glad City now has 2. I hope they use that third one soon. If not this window, the next window. But yeah, it's a great mechanism to use based on all these crazy rules MLS has. I think the team should be fully taking advantage of it and find the third U22 player either this window or next window. But yeah, I'm a big fan, and just players that have potential and you could continue developing. Either they stay with your team for the whole life of the contract, or you sell them and then you get the next one. So something great that the team could be using.
And that's the express purpose of the U22 initiative position itself. Like, the reason it exists is to incentivize teams to sign young players, take chances on younger players they might not have otherwise been able to afford, and then develop them in MLS to sell them on in their quote unquote prime years. That's the entire express written purpose of that and the young designated player, the U23 type thing. So we love this mechanism in as much as we love anything MLS does. We wish there was more freedom across the board, obviously, but within what they do, this is something needs to be taken advantage of. Santi, if I was Phil, I would probably cut us off here because we've been going forever. But because you and I are in particular so ingrained in supporter culture as well, you with Santos, me with the Luligans, I feel we have to touch on this last topic because it's also going to impact future content from Flyover Footy.
Yeah,
right?
Let's do it. I know where you're going.
On Thursday at 1 p.m. on the dot, St. Louis City announced that they have facilitated meetings between MLS and the supporter groups in the future of the Open Cup. They said, City recently organized a meeting between Major League Soccer and City supporter groups to discuss the future of the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, recognizing the rich history of the Open Cup in St. Louis. The club president and general manager, Diego Gigliani, reaffirmed the club's desire and commitment to participate. Nelson Rodriguez, MLS Executive Vice President of Sporting Product and Competition, expressed meaningful progress with U.S. Soccer in finding a suitable path forward for MLS clubs heading into 2025. The discussions were positive, and the dialogue will continue as negotiations between the leagues and U.S. Soccer progress. And the supporter groups in response, I'm going to say the English version if you're okay with that on this one.
Yeah. Perfect.
The other would be embarrassing for me. Monday night, the supporter groups, this is a combined collective of Fleur de Noise, the St. Louligans, STL Santos, the St. Louis City Punks, the Thieves, and No Goal Patrol, released a statement that said Monday night, this past week, the collective of supporter groups were invited to a meeting with Diego Gigliani, president of City SC, and Nelson Rodriguez, executive vice president of sporting product and competition for Major League Soccer, to continue a dialogue surrounding our stance on the U.S. Open Cup. We were able to have a candid and constructive conversation about MLS decision to withdraw from the U.S. Open Cup and target a conversation towards 2025, reinforcing the importance of supporting America's oldest soccer tournament. The meeting showed encouraging progress towards our goal of recognizing and supporting a tournament as historic as U.S. Open Cup. We look forward to continuing the conversation in the following days and weeks with City, the League, and U.S. Soccer Federation. Santi, what'd you make of it?
It's a step in the right direction. Open Cup has a great history here in St. Louis. And yeah, I was disappointed to not see St. Louis CDSC playing in the Open Cup.
Yep.
If you go back to last year when the team played Open Cup, sellout crowd against Union Omaha midweek game. You were able, like that's when you started to see some of these younger players, like Celio came out in that game. Like he had
Yes.
I probably have the number wrong, 2 or 3 assists, and AC Jackson
AZ.
also scored goals. Even Akil Watts scored his first goal for City.
That's
So
right.
it's a great opportunity to play in that competition, and players that maybe not get a lot of minutes, they can showcase there. And St. Louis just has great history with the Open Cup, and I think it's something the team should be playing every year. I was disappointed that this year the team didn't play. It was something that the team couldn't really control because we know there is a competition committee that determines that, and the team is not part of that committee. But I think it's a great step in the right direction. It shows the team cares. The team has always said that they wanted to play in the Open Cup. I had a chance to interview Diego a few weeks ago during halftime, and he stressed, yeah, we wanted to play, but in the end, it wasn't our decision. Other people from the team have told me the same thing. So,
Yep.
so yeah, I hope things keep moving forward, and in 2025, the team is back to Open Cup, whether it is like a full team or you can play some guys like play a mix of the first team and guys from City 2 without so many restrictions. I will welcome that too. But the point is having St. Louis CDSC having a presence and other MLS teams too, just because there is a lot of history. And if you look at other leagues in the world, they have similar tournaments, and they are big, like Spain, Copa del Rey, England, FA Cup. Why will US not do the same thing and have their top teams involved in the tournament? So I like what's happening. I think it's great that the team is looking for these conversations, and I hope they continue and it ends up with City participating in the 2025 Open Cup.
There's a lot of avenues that you can look at that we definitely don't have time to revisit, but we've talked about a lot of these, including the need to expand the roster sizes or at least allow for some exceptions to pull City 2 players up for these kinds of outside MLS competitions. And I remember recently when I was talking to Michael Venzel, he was talking to Jen Cease right after me from KMOX, and she had asked him a question about Germany. One of the things that Wenzel was talking about was the organizational differences in that if you're playing for a team in Germany, you're playing for that team. Like you're playing for that group, that organization. It doesn't matter if you're playing for their 2 team, their U18s, U19s. Like if the first team needs and wants you, you're up there. And it's fine because you're in their organization. That's the model that we need to get to. That's where we need to make meaningful progress towards, because it will directly impact the ability to, whether you take them at face value or not, all the things that MLS has said about fixture congestion, we know it's shooting themselves in the foot with the Leagues Cup and things like that. But everything that anybody points to as issues with more competitions, it's resolved by relaxing the roster requirements, at least for those tournaments outside of MLS proper. It takes steps. You don't have to seismically change everything, but take meaningful steps. And I have no doubt, I have all the faith in the world that the leaders of these supporter groups are saying these exact same things. And I also have no illusions of the timing of this statement and the timing of the meeting that occurred.
Yes.
Leagues Cup is 9 days away from when we're recording this. And there is a noticeable supporter group boycott that's occurring for that tournament, where St. Louis is not just hosting 2 games, but St. Louis, I believe, is going to host every game that they qualify for up until the semifinals. And none of those games will have the North End be as loud and boisterous as it has been for MLS matches and previous US Open Cup matches. There will be no drums. There might be smoke if the club lets it off, but there will be no horn section, no brass section, and there won't be organized flags. There may be flags, but there won't be organized to the extent that we usually see them. And that is one of the reasons I think that City was able to successfully get this conversation started. Meaningful change occurs when you're holding your ground, you have a loud enough voice, and you've proven yourself in ways that matter to show that you should have a voice. The North End in City Park is known throughout the league, from traveling fans, from Apple broadcasters, from broadcasters on radio, as something special. And it takes its place alongside other teams that have been in the league in Portland, in Seattle, at LAFC, even Austin right before us. They're Atlanta, all of these different places, we have stood alongside them because the supporter groups in St. Louis have proven themselves, and they've showed up, they've made noise, and they've had a lot of fun doing it. But if you're taking something as iconic as the US Open Cup that means so much to St. Louis away from them, they are speaking up and they're taking a stand, and we support them. And that is something that not only they have a right to, but has clearly rubbed MLS the wrong way, to the point where they're willing to take a meeting from one of their clubs, which this does not happen often. I don't want anybody to be under the illusion that clubs can just call up the executive vice president of sporting product and competition and say, hey, Nelson, our supporters have some questions. They don't necessarily like the direction that you're going to with these DP rules, or with
Right.
with Leagues Cup. They think they don't have this. They don't like the fact that you're not allowing something in the supporter sections. They'd like to chat. That doesn't happen. The only other time that I've been aware of that Nelson Rodriguez has taken a meeting, and I don't know everything. I'm not end all be all, so correct me if I'm wrong if you listen to this. Nelson Rodriguez meets with the Independent Supporter Council, the ISC. That's the type of organization that he meets with and his team meets with. So for him to take a meeting with just the St. Louis City supporter groups, that's a big deal. The needle has been moved in this. The boycott has been taken seriously, and they are concerned. I mean, it's not even me saying anything negative. This is a fact. This is reporting as much as anything else that they appear to be concerned by the attendance and the visuals that will occur at Leagues Cup in St. Louis when St. Louis hosts FC Juarez and FC Dallas, at least in Leagues Cup. And from an MLS perspective, God forbid St. Louis moves on, because every single match that they host will have a similar optic on Apple TV. A tournament that introduced Lionel Messi to MLS, that MLS put such a premium on to focus on, that we've seen forcing all the clubs to put their social media content out there. This is a massive deal to MLS, and it's a massive deal that one of their biggest fan bases, one of their biggest supporter groups, most passionate, best optically sporting supporter groups is going to be MIA. And I think that matters. And that's credit to the supporter groups, the Luligans, Santos, the Punks, Thieves, No Goal Patrol, everybody. Credit to them for making this happen. And Florida Noise, especially as the noisemakers. Like, it doesn't matter necessarily what the ticket prices are going for, because we know that everybody has their own opinion. And I like that the supporter groups are saying that they want everybody to make their own decision. Like, right,
Yeah.
the supporter groups themselves have made these leadership decisions. They've recommended to their members to do something. But yeah, I'm supportive of the way this entire thing is going, and I would be so proud if the St. Louis supporter groups can say that they had a voice in St. Louis City SC participating in the 2025 U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, that will be a great end of the story. But yeah, I love what the supporter groups are doing, voicing their opinion and trying to change this situation. And yeah, like the last few weeks, I've been thinking about what City Park is gonna look like, and obviously everybody has their choice about going. Obviously, I'll be there because I have to work. But I think a lot about, okay, what's the North then gonna be like? No
Yep.
noise, no chants, no instruments, no flags or fewer flags. And to me, it's just not a good look. Imagine if City makes it far, and you mentioned Messi. Like, what if both teams make it far enough that they have to play each other at some point, and they will play at
Mm-hmm.
City Park, and imagine just having the North End just being like what it is right now. So yeah, I think it's a great step. How things change, and as a result of this, City plays in the 2025 Open Cup, and
Yep.
we'll see what the decisions are made for Leagues Cup.
My opinion is the club is caught in a rock and a hard place, and I understand that some people don't like the boycotts because they feel it's negative on the players and on the team, who is just, they're trying to do what they can, but the team plays in this ecosystem, and this is the downside to playing in a league like MLS, where it's single entity, and that the league has executive control of these kind of things, and you can't go off on your own and say, we want to compete in this tournament, so we're going to compete. And that's it's good and it's bad in other ways, but in this way, we're seeing just that the team and the front office and even ownership may want to do it, but if enough of the ownership groups in MLS, the competition committee that probably drives a lot of this, if they decide things, then it doesn't take unanimous vote. We'll never know how CK and her ownership group voted on this kind of thing, but on one level, it doesn't matter because you have the president and the GM saying everything, and Diego is the mouthpiece also of the ownership group. He doesn't say things that the ownership group goes against. So this is the club supporting the supporters and knowing that they have a responsibility and a desire to carry on the tradition of the US Open Cup. And I hope the city is successful, and I hope the supporters are successful in making that happen for next year. But Santi, let's end with what we're going to be doing for Leagues Cup. I almost said US Open Cup, force of habit. Next week, Leagues Cup starts next week. After SKC, we have a week, and then I believe it's FC Dallas. It's been a tough decision on how, and we haven't even like really talked about how we're going to cover it or what we're going to do during Leagues Cup. I know Phil is still on vacation. Stu's got work stuff going on. You're going to be calling the games. The first thing that we're going to be doing next week is speaking to a very special guest who will provide, and I think we're going to leave it at that. Special guest right now. Santi and I are going to have a discussion with somebody who can give us a lot of insight into the experience that you might be having at City Park during Leagues Cup, but also an opportunity to hear how the team is reacting and feeling about some of the supporter actions, what that experience might be like without the North End being as loud as it is. We hope to get some of that feedback as well. That will be what our midweek episode probably next week focuses on. So be on the lookout for that next week after Fallout, after all of that jazz with SKC. But I think what our coverage mostly is going to be like, and I might get flack from Santi or Phil once they find out about this, because this is me speaking right now, Matt Baker's opinion. I want to focus on St. Louis City. I credit St. Louis City for standing up in support of the US Open Cup. I understand they don't have necessarily a say in it. So I still plan on focusing on what St. Louis City does. Whether I have tongue-in-cheek comments about this being a preseason for our new players, might happen. I won't be focusing on the placement in Leagues Cup. I won't be focusing on what other teams are doing in Leagues Cup. Won't be focused on who our next opponent might be in Leagues Cup if we move on. This will be a game-by-game basis of St. Louis is playing a match, and it is an opportunity for Marcel Hartl to see time, and we'll see who we're playing, maybe preview that match, but focusing on St. Louis City, because the players are using this as an opportunity. We hope we get that win against SKC. But the players are also using this as an opportunity where everybody still refers to this as a Leagues Cup break. So I'm going to treat it as a break. I'm going to treat it as St. Louis City is playing a glorified friendly. And so we're going to talk about what St. Louis is doing on the field, how the players are performing, and we're going to keep it a lot more focused inward on St. Louis City as opposed to whatever else is going on in the tournament that they may be playing in. Because I think it matters for St. Louis in the long haul for MLS, what we do in this series of matches. But because of everything that's occurred and the conversation we just had about the supporter groups, I unfortunately don't care as much about the tournament and the overall climate of matches. I care about St. Louis City.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I'll support it.
That's all I need, Santi. It's enough for me, no matter what anybody else thinks. Anything else before we go and possibly push the 2-hour mark on this?
Yeah, I think we did or are close to pushing it. We were joking that with all the news and things going on this week, we could probably go 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yep.
But I think it's enough for today. I appreciate everybody who stayed with us, and all the listeners and all the comments on the chats. Obviously, we were never able to get to all of them, but we really appreciate it.
We see everything. Jerry, Luis, Ryan, Musa, everybody who's joined us on the live stream, Winter, thank you so much for the comments. It adds to what we're doing right now. Thank you for listening on the podcast. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you enjoyed this discussion. We hope that you enjoy the SKC game. We hope you enjoy the break, more city matches, and let the hype build. We're not doing well this season, but the new blood that we have coming in is exciting on various levels. The youthfulness that is Jake Girdwood-Reich, and the amount of years that we have him available for us on a U22 initiative contract, playing both center back and center defensive mid. The playmaking and scoring prowess of Marcel Hartl with his 30-plus goal contributions. Cedric Teuchert coming in with his two Bundesliga experience up top, replacing Klaus right now because he's hurt, but when Klaus returns, he adds to it. We're talking high-quality players that are now going to be part of our attack and our spine. The transfer window is open. It's here. SKC and the Clásico is on deck. Thank you so much for joining us here on Flyover Footy. We've enjoyed being here with you, and we will talk to you later.
One game. Hopefully, Monday we'll have a happy fallout.
Vamos City.
Vamos.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us and for sticking with us. My God, it's almost 11 o'clock on a Thursday. Holy cow.
Wow.
All right. We're going to get out of here. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the drive if you're making it to Kansas. If you're watching at the Ultra Club, have fun. Have a Mick Ultra on the club and wherever else you're watching it. Cheers and go City.